Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Hazardous Area Safety Podcast. So today I have Mark Ah Chow on the show with us. Now, Mark and I have a long history, and it's been patchy is probably lack of a better term. Mark, we've kind of seen each other at events and had really good conversations, and then we both go away and do our own things, and then we come back and have another chat and pick up where we left off. And so that's the best way that I can describe it. So welcome to the show to start with.
Thanks, Travis. Thanks for having me.
And I might hand it over to you to explain what you do, how you came into the industry, where you're at now, because you're in a bit of a transition period from what you're putting out on LinkedIn and then where you're seeing things move and we can start the conversation. So over to you.
Thanks, Travis. Cut a long story short, I'll give it to you maybe in three main sections. And the first section that I started off in the electrical industry was in power stations, believe it or not, coal-fired power stations, which is obviously very controversial nowadays as such over there. But as you can well
Clean
imagine,
coal.
coal. And from there, it progressed from coal, and I spent a year doing nuclear power generation in Germany with a very big organization that you might have heard of, Travis, called Siemens.
Mm-hmm.
And I spent probably 15, 17 years, a couple of years in Australia with him as well. So that's where I had a lot of basis on my different exposures, including chemical industries, chemical manufacturing, and that's my exposure hard and fast into your particular specialization, which is hazardous areas per se.
Mm-hmm.
Specialized in automation in that space for a long time. Came to Australia, very fortunate to get a good head start, as you can imagine, coming into Australia in the late 90s on the back of South African making some geopolitical changes in that space.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly it was always going to develop in the space that it finds itself in, which is unfortunate, but there we are. Having said that, it's been a remarkable industry, and I still have a lot of network in South Africa. Came back over here, joined up another market leader called Schneider Electric. Been with them for about 10 years as such over there. And then had a small stint at a small company called IPD, and then been over 15, 17 years at NHP now in various roles, which includes automation for Rockwell Automation per se. So been very privileged to work with three market leaders per se, and longest since plus 10 years in each of those companies. So I hope I've
Wow.
given you a bit of background there, Travis.
That's a very, very long career. You would have seen not only the market change, but considering that you've worked with the market leaders and the established players within the industry, you would have seen different tactics and different strategies that they have towards their clientele as well. When when guests come on after that, we typically take one step back and go back to when you were in, growing up. Was there a pivotal moment that you said, this is what I want to be, or did you just fall into the industry? How did that come about?
Oh, a couple of big questions. So let's take your sort of comment in two stages. I'll give you a very interesting commentary that I just shared recently, working, and again, this is my perceptions, and you've got to put in that conditions apply. Working for a German company, whereas compared to, let's say, a French company, the big difference, as someone said to me in the French company, is that if the Germans tell you the product is going to be launched on the 1st of November, it is the 1st of November, not a day before and not a day after. And that's pretty unique.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference with the French company is that typically, he said, the example is that if I came up to you, Travis, and I said, Travis, no, I'm not going to try to put on a French accent. My accents are not good. Travis, you are fired. You know,
Yeah.
you would
I'll
you
see
would
I'll
turn
see you
around.
tomorrow morning.
Exactly. You would turn around and say, "Oh, Mark, you're obviously upset about something.
Yeah.
Let's go have a bowl of red wine and we discuss this."
And we'll discuss it. Let's relax. you're having a bad day. You haven't eaten.
Yeah.
Come on, relax. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So essentially, it's good to get that perspective as well.
Mm,
And coming back into how I ended up in this particular space over there, in a lot of ways, we have to be very humble, but at the
mm,
same time, not be too shy to promote ourselves. What I mean by that is that I've had a couple of very good managers and very good promoters within my career,
mm,
and they've pushed me into spaces that they could see potential, which otherwise would have not come my way. So moving into spaces like plant automation, manufacturing, pulp and paper, breweries, which is a favorite part of my career. And then understanding what goes into project management, understands what goes into the plant manager's day, I guess,
mm.
has been very insightful for me. And I've enjoyed that aspect of it. And that's why I honestly believe that that's why I can connect well with persons in manufacturing spaces. So whether steel rolling, whether it's pulp and paper, whether it's chocolate making, I've enjoyed all of that because it's all relevant to our industry in many a way.
And how did you? So that's a good oversight about how where your career's broadened. Now, over that career history, you've always been central to relationships, and relationships obviously are the essence for business development managers and trying to get the purchase. You're trying to get the purchase order, but more importantly, I think that there's been quite a big shift in sales approaches, with particularly around the engineering space, because no longer are people trying to be order takers, but we're actively trying to solve solutions for our clients. So can you talk us about that shift that you've seen within the industry, and also how you you center solutions within your clients as well, if we can unpack that, because I think that that's a good topic to kind of lead into, because sometimes in our space people over-index into the technical aspect and they just want a box to do a trick, but it's more than that. It's more than okay, I have that device, plug it in here, it will work. It's kind of, what are you trying to expect? What are you expecting long term for this?
I think there's a couple of very interesting lessons, life lessons that I've learned around this. And essentially what it boils down to is that if you are developing a long-term relationship, and there are many examples we can touch and probably touch on two or three of them just to give you some example. Whilst we're all in sales, it's important to realize that the sale in itself can make or break us. And I'm reminded off the top of my head of a typical sort of Australian traveling through the outback and he has a fan belt problem, radiator problem, for argument's sake. Now, you're broken down, you're 400 kilometers, 500 kilometers from the middle of nowhere, and there happens to be a garage owner there. You can sell your fan belt or a new radiator. You'd pay him
Mm,
anything. You'd
mm,
pay him anything from $500 to $2,000 for it over there.
mm, mm,
Depending on the service it gives you, you will remember that.
mm,
This guy was a good bloke and he only charged me $50 and he says, look, I'm sitting around doing nothing. And you say, man, that was a good experience. You'd be equally happy to pay $2,000
mm,
and drive away thinking, he ripped me off. Now, the chance of you getting a sale call or the garage owner getting a resale is minimal. In other words, you're going to go in one direction, I'm going to come back. But in our business, we are here for the resale, we're here for the long haul. And it breaks down to so many different buzzwords today that you've seen in our careers as such over there. The trusted advisor. You've heard the other buzzword over there. Oh yeah. You've heard of them talk about the other buzzwords over there. Mate, you really got to get to know these people over there. At the end of the day, if they trust you, they'll come back to us as such over there. But at the end of the day, one of my early mentors, and you'll hear me refer to a guy called Stan quite often.
mhm,
Stan used to say to us, "This is the business we're in, Mark. Peace of mind. If you can give your customer peace of mind, he'll keep on talking to you.
Yeah.
Because what actually happened, Travis, is that when it's in trouble, you want to be top of mind when he's got trouble, especially the Friday night, Wednesday morning at 2 o'clock. Who can I call? And he'll
Yeah.
take his call.
Yeah.
Be responsive to his needs. And I'll tell you a quick story. And this is without, hopefully, if you need to edit it, be my guest.
We'll just cut it out.
But this guy phoned me up on a Friday morning, 7 a.m., and he said to me, we've been trying to get the plant started since 2 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon as such. Don't give me a lecture. No, don't get right. I won't give a lecture. Why? What's up? And he said to me, my guys on the plant bought the product off a trading site, a global trading site, and it happened to be, it was faulty. And we know we stuffed up. Okay, the such over there. Can you get someone to me and get my plant started? 8 o'clock, made the phone call, got someone by 10:30 that morning. They got the plant up and running.
Yep.
He phoned me back again Monday morning and he said, thank you very much. Thanks for not lecturing me as such over there. Now we've learned a lesson. And that guy, when I gave the notice that I'm considering a career change and all this different transition, he was one of the first to reach out. Thank you for all the help. We're talking about 8-9 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of relationships that I value.
Because the thing is, what I think what people don't understand or they take for granted is that particularly within the engineering space, plant engineering, people go. So one person will go to XYZ, they'll go to another, they'll go to their competitor, they'll make a career change, they'll go to a different plant, they'll increase or they'll make a lateral sideways move from a career perspective. And the only things that if you've built that trust, if you've continually built, made deposits in their bank of trust, if something goes wrong, they'll call you because you know that they know that you're going to give them a solution or you're going to help them solve their problem. And the sales, the sales is secondary tangible thing on the back end of it. It's more you've invested in them, they've invested in you, and that's how the relationship works. So I see what you're talking about there, the economy that's going to support people within this market, within the economy, and it will get them through the peaks and the troughs anyway. Yeah, that's really insightful to see that. What did they do with the broken piece of equipment? Did you get it framed and put up and said did you say that to them, or they're like, no, we're done? They just put it in the bin.
I'm pretty much like yourself over there. We've obviously come from the school of hard knocks. And whilst it is tempting to command when he's down, I decided not to. But just touching on your topic here, Travis, and I think one of the very interesting topics today is AI. AI, for example, I was speaking to someone who's very knowledgeable in the space of social media and the different skill sets. And I said, look, we've seen a lot of these type of technological challenges, AI being the latest one. But the disciplines in our business hasn't changed. So whether it's engineering or medical or accounting, those particular disciplines are still there. But one thing that will never change, in my opinion, is such over there, is the person-on-person trust factor. So if we think we can systemize and generate a lot of workflows and processes that's just going to make our jobs redundant, if you don't have the person trust factor, who can I call in the moment of need? Who's top of mind is going to solve my problems? Who can bring resources to the actual issue as such over there? I think that is still a skill set, the person-to-person skill set that I value still. Now, I might be wrong, but
I think no. I think you're right. Like we are seeing the uptake of AI within the industry, but I think it's coming back to we're seeing people utilize it, and then they're using it for generic content. At one of the conferences that I was speaking at, um, a lot of people were utilizing generative AI, whether it be ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini, and I saw it firsthand. Sitting up at the sound booth while speakers up, and you're taking notes and things like that. You'd see the purview of the land and the delegates, and then you'd see them. They'd get an email. They'd copy and paste that email into ChatGPT, or their own GPT model and send it back. Just copy paste, like get that result and out it goes. Trying to get more efficient and utilizing a product knowledge base to be able to do it. And I think that that's one of the challenges that we're going to face as an industry about how to disseminate what that generative AI language is. And I think it's going to dilute. We're going to see, I believe, we're going to see an uptake in the people who the know their craft well, and the people that are just going to try and be efficient, and they're going to get the low hanging fruit because they're just going to be all about the speed. So that we're going to see a chasm, I feel, between the players and the people that just want to say we use AI. I don't know if it has. I think it's okay for content, but I don't think it's good for context, particularly around engineering plants. You can sit there. I've seen some people use it in our industry for hazardous area classification, um, uh, to do a classification report. And what we do here, um, every time that there's an update within a model, I'll test it. And it's not so that we can utilize it for our everyday, but I want to be able to break it so I know where the system lacks. And we'll provide it, our back end processes, our back end learning, our back end knowledge resource, all of that, and it will still provide generic rubbish because it's looking for that generic rubbish. It's looking for, an answer that won't offend. And sometimes when you're in the position that someone is trusting you, you need to be able to push back, or you need to have that context of how their plant operates to be able to provide them with a good answer.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of, I mean, today it's topical that we can talk about some geopolitical conflicts that's happening in the Middle East. And in that space, they reminded back in the early 60s or the late 60s, over there was the so-called Cuban Missile Crisis. And in that particular case, at business school, what they taught us over there is what they call group think. Where if you are surrounded by people which give you that so-called safe answer, and it doesn't allow you to question some of that information that it is serving you, then I think the value of all these new technologies should be questioned. And I think that's part of where we, as real life experienced team members as such, and again, you and I are privileged to have been in a space where we can see some of these issues, but we have to challenge that, not necessarily in a confrontational way, but in a developmental, incremental way. And I think that groupthink is something that I'm well reminded of today, that it is relevant, that we don't just follow the crowd. Back in South Africa, sort of agricultural in the sense of that we don't want to be sheep. We don't want to just be followers and base our future decisions only on history. We also have to be transformative and then generate that forward thinking as such over there. I've just written an article, hope to go live in the next 48 hours, such over that we want to build for the future and set the standards for the future as well.
I, I completely agree with you. I think that I fear for the industry in a sense, because I fear that we're going to over-index on generative AI and lose the knowledge, the experience that people who are leaving the market or leaving the industry have, because there's not that knowledge transfer. We've got a lot of people who sit on standard committees. We've got a lot of people who sit in, technical director positions in industry, and they're not given the opportunity to have time, because that's what it takes to be able to apprentice people correctly and train people correctly, and all of the problems that they've had to um, work out or solve from a first principle approach. We're going to lose that because we need to have the project done on time. We've got costs, we've got efficiencies, we're behind schedule, X, Y, Z, just get it done. And it dilutes the industry, because it's cost when it should be, what's the impact that this is going to have on our industry? What's the impact that this is going to have on our business long term? What are we paying for today, or what are we saving today that's going to cost us tomorrow?
I think the metaphor that I like to use in this particular context is the whack-a-mole story as such over there. We've got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
We whack-a-mole and it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if your foundation and your fundamentals are incorrect as such over there, the composition of the actual accelerant or the actual air and oxygen with your particular dust or
Mm-hmm.
gas, the fundamentals hasn't changed. And you think you can just solve the problem by putting a piece of chewing gum on the problem as such over there. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't solve the problem. And we've seen it. And if we don't take care of and bring back that particular awareness on the back of sometimes tragic issues, tragic incidents as such over there, yeah, we are building glass houses, as they call
Mm-hmm.
it.
The challenge that we have within Australia is complacency comes in a lot, and you've, there are reasons for that. You've got regulators that are proactive in the industry, but a regulator, I hate what I really dislike about our industry when we talk about compliance and safety particularly. There's a lot of fear mongering that goes on about it. There's a lot of, for example, oh, if you don't reach this mark, there'll be fines and you could go to jail. I tell people when they start saying things like that, name me 10 people that have gone to jail. Name 5. Name one company in the last 5 years that have had a court case against them, because regulators would rather work with industries, because from an honesty perspective, there's a lot of places you and I have walked into a lot of places that it can improve, and it can improve substantially. But they've got competing issues. They've got budgets, they've got production, they're balancing manpower, they're budgeting, cycles, they're balancing all of those aspects of running a business. And it's a case that they sit there and go, well, we've done it this way for so many years and we haven't had an incident, or we haven't had an accident. And then you get people, well, put their hands on their waist. So if you don't do this, or you naughty boy, it's kind of like, no, that doesn't happen. Like
Yeah,
realistically,
yeah.
the regulator will not get involved, or the regulator has 100 other things to worry about, rather than, going and smacking poor Johnny on the head, because they'll get a notice of improvement. And I think it's a case that if we were all, uh, I hate using the word vulnerable, but if we were all just a bit more um, re- relaxed in um, knowing that we could improve, and we were all um, in a state that where we could accept our failures, because even as a business owner, I make mistakes all the time. I make so many mistakes. There's 100 different competing things, and there's things that I don't get done. So I'm not sitting here going like holier than thou, and I don't want to come across like that. But I think from in industry's perspective, getting back to the AI discussion, if we held it a bit more loose, we wouldn't be just trying to get that answer to solve our problem, like you said, that whack-a-mole, because we'd know, okay, the answer isn't the answer that we're getting isn't really going to solve it, because we need time to be able to implement that, to change our mindset within the industry. It's cliche as it sounds, but if you if you went to an industry and it was perfect, they typically have quite a healthy culture within it. They have a open discussion when incidents occurs. They have continuous improvement. They are focused on producing, but there's a good morale within the team. There's evidence of that in everything that they do, because how they do one thing is how they do everything.
Yeah, I think you remind me of a couple of sites that I used to work on. So back in South Africa, one of the big, let's call it politically motivated investments was oil from gas, the old Sasol type projects and such over there, the Fischer-Tropsch process, and that was big in that space over there, where with political funding, money wasn't a problem. But nowadays, with commercial realities and everyone working in the space over there, the whack-a-mole approach is pretty real for us. So I think, coming to your point and such over there, what we need to work on and to give them encouragement. So if there was an alien sitting above us and say, so what's the answer, Travis? What's the answer? And I think, as in most business cases as such, you cannot continuously do analysis, because you end up with that so-called paralysis. So we got to take some point where we say, all right, let's assess a little bit further than just straightforward whack-a-mole. And that is my approach as such over there. The RCA, the root cause analysis, let's have a look at that. If the fundamentals are wrong, let's be practical. Let's address those as such, because your regulators as such over there, they're going to follow some sort of guideline, regulation, legislation, standard. And that's all good and fine as such over there. But as we know, with all engineering issues, grandfathering clauses and issues like that.
Yeah, just had to bring that up.
Sorry. again, you laugh because you've been there. You've been there. And all of us are realistic issues when it comes to those particular issues. And your honor moment where you stand in front and you are the person that's the subject matter expert that gets called upon. And if it's not a your honor moment, but it's a your honor, let's say not in a legal sense over there, but you're asked to give your professional opinion, is that your honor moment as well? And that's where you've got to be able to address those and present that in a format that is both timely, cost effective, but also real. Because at the end of the day, money is important to businesses. Nothing is more important than dad or mom coming home from work that night.
That's why a lot of people don't understand the terminology that we have within health and safety legislation is as far as reasonably practicable. And that's what it comes back to, because there are so many different competing factors within it. And at the end of the day, everyone wants to go to work. Well, my belief is that everyone goes to work to do a solid day's work for a good day's pay. Yeah, there are bad apples out there. Yeah, there are bad actors out there, but the percentage of them is small. When we're talking about established businesses, established enterprise, people go to work to do a solid day's work for a good day's pay. Yeah, they might have a bad day. They might have 10% bad days or 15% bad days, whatever. But everyone should go home safely. And that onus is a collaborative onus. It's not an individual. Yes, there are individual responsibilities, but there's a business responsibilities to provide that culture. And I think I personally, where we see penetration for change management, is when there is the ability for people to put their hand up and raise concerns in a constructive way. That, they're not going to they're not shy to put their hand up and go, I don't feel right about this. They're not shy to sit there and be like, we have all of these problems. It is taken on board. Their concerns are taken on board. It's, prioritized, it's scheduled, whatever it is, because everyone has concerns and everyone has challenges, and the people who are on the plant room floor are the ones who usually have all that information, but they've got that chain of command where they can go, I can talk to such and such about it, and I know it's going to be action. It may not be action today, but we can talk about a solution on how to make things better.
Comes back to the first point when we started this discussion, Travis. It's got to be relevant. It's got to be timely. And most of all, as you said over there, which wasn't discussed, but time cost effective as well.
Mm.
As well. So all of those are relevant. And again, it boils down to experience.
Mm.
It boils down to the relevancy of that particular assessment as such over there and following those correct. Now, the worst case scenario is that you do it on a whack-a-mole. I followed the actual documentation over there. Yeah. Oh, it's the whole story over there. I'm going to use a bad example, but the metaphor is, well, the operation, doctor, was a success. It's a pity the patient didn't conform and he died on the table.
Mm.
So ultimately we've got to get the right solution. And that's something that you and I guess, I think we agree upon.
Yeah, and it's about implementing that solution as well, because providing it's one thing, but having it implemented correctly and having it maintained and having it reviewed, that's a whole different kettle of fish to unpack. But to be able to provide that support long term, have that relationship where you can ring up and say, hey, you've provided a solution to someone. In 2 months' time, I'm going to give you a call back and we're going to see how it's progressing, because we don't want to have a report, or we don't want to have a system that's left on the shelf, or that you're just throwing it in to get something done. We want to make sure that over the course of a period of time that it's going to work and it's going to be maintained. It's going to provide you with return on investment as well, as you've said, the cost aspect of it. There's no point just, we've got to get this box of tricks, plug it in, and it'll work. It's not like that.
Yeah, the validation, verification and such, the test, operate and test again, so all of those issues become real in these type of topics. So.
And how have you seen that particular area change over your career history as well?
I think the understanding and the presentation of that particular requirements. Now, there's many ways we can sell this. The worst type of salesman will go inside over there and use the fear factor, and that generates that one-off sale that we talked about previously. So I got an article, I got a direct message the other day that someone referred to someone else over there as a snake oil salesman.
I've been called that, and we'll talk about that after this.
Okay. And those are real. Those are real as such over there. But as you rightfully pointed out, they are there, but they are smaller. And I think our customers know who they are. Now, if we are grounded in the correct space as such over there, I think the person who ultimately within, let's say, safety, hazardous area safety over there, the person that's deemed to be ultimately responsible is the kind of person that you and I need to get in front of, such that we can get that awareness into that particular discussion, Travis. And that's the difference. That's the key difference as such. It's not necessarily, and this is I guess I'm not trying to disparage any of our persons that we dealt and done business with, but essentially we've got to get to the person that's ultimately responsible. It's that you're on a moment. What did you do? Have you got documentation? Yes. And what did you do to actually check? I think that's the difference in this space. It shouldn't have changed. It shouldn't have changed in the last 20, 30 years. And for whatever reason, we in Australia operate in different standards to the Europeans and the Americans and the New Zealanders. It doesn't matter to me as such over there. I think the principles should be followed still.
It should. It should. I'll give you the example of why I was called a snake oil salesman. So we have we still we're still the consultants for this particular client. The reason that they called us that was they were quite stressed because they were actually given a notice of improvement by a regulator. So they were given a notice of improvement. They had 21 days to rectify. We got called up. This is the first time that we've done business with them. We were recommended to them, and flew over, went through the notice of improvement, went through the documentation that they had, and said, "Listen, what your documentation's wrong. Here's what you need to do, and we need to redo it. This is the cost." And then a couple of days later, the general manager gave me a call, called me a snake oil salesman, told me that, my sales acumen's quite good, and um and then they'd gone back to that particular consultant that had done the documentation that we told them that it was wrong, and they'd assured them that it was correct. And so I'll let him go, because what am I going to say? No, I'm not, like, he's got an opinion of me. I said, "Listen, this is a stressful situation for you. I'm going to put my chips on the table. We'll do the work for free. Not for free, but we won't charge you straight away." I said, "If we can't give you the desired outcome that I'm talking about, then we'll do it and you won't have to pay a thing. But if we do it and we get you the desired outcome, then you can pay." I said, "And then if we walk away, you can tell all your friends that, Zero Industries and our team can't, like, we're not worth a pinch of salt." I said, "But if we do it, you'll be happy, and you'll see how we do work. You'll see the professionalism of our team, and you'll get the results that you want." And so he goes, "All right then," like, just cheekily, he's like, "All right then, I'll see how it goes." So what he had an area which had been classified. He had it classified, and it was classified wrong. And the reason being is the previous consultant hadn't done any calculations. He's just gone, "Pictures, yeah, here it is here." And so the whole area was this hazardous area. And we went, "Well, for a start, this is the relative density of your chemical. Um, this is how the model of your chemical will go from a gas dispersion scenario." So we modeled everything. And it went from a whole room to being only around the particular sources of what he was releasing, and the flame off, the curing process and the batching process of it as well. And then we submitted that report. We had a meeting with WorkSafe because it was in Victoria. And we said, "Here's what the previous one was. Here's a new one. This is what they need to change. These are the controls that they need to put in. This is what they need to do. These particular areas we don't need to worry about because they're completely outside the zone." And then WorkSafe Victoria said, "This is one of the most educational scenarios that we've ever had." And then the client came back and he apologized for it. And I said, "No, like, the reason that he's saying that is because he's stressed. He's got someone breathing down his neck, threatening his business. He's going to sit there in 21 days, going to have to shut it down. Or if we follow this particular person's recommendation, if they followed that previous consultant, they had to change all of their gearboxing, all their motoring systems, all the VSDs. And at that stage, it was 22 weeks out before they could get equipment back on it. But when we did it, all of the electrical equipment was outside the zone anyway. And we said, as a preventative measure, let's put up a Perspex interface so you can just shield it anyway from overspray and everything like that, because it was 2.5 meters away from a coupling. Like, the barrel coupling for it was like 2.5 meters away. Like, so when people say things, I think you have to look at the context around why they're saying some things. And I think what I like to see and what I like to tell people, and it's what I've been kind of getting to the last couple of weeks on my posts as well, is make your consultants accountable. Ask them for a checklist. If they're willing to take the money, show them how their particular report that they've generated meets the requirements in the standards that they've mentioned or satisfies the requirements within the legislation that they're applying. It's not that difficult. You go to a report, typically within the first 5 pages, there's a reference document section. What are the reference documents? Why is that applicable? How does that get interpreted? What's the interpretation of those standards and the applicable clauses to my particular work site? Or the context of that report. Where is it meeting it? Where is it exceeding it? Where are we diverting from it? You can ask those questions. Ask for a checklist.
Yeah, yeah. I'm reminded of a issue where a particular large multi-site organization was asked that they had an incident and brought in a consultant, and it wasn't the consultant's problem in this particular case, but the response was from the financial guys in the organization, the board, reading to the board, and here goes your blogs, challenging me. Where they turned around and said, we want the highest safety rating that we can get. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that says it all. But going into the weeds for a minute, and they turned around and said, well, arguably the answer, linearly speaking, is Cat 4. What everything should be Cat 4. You can imagine where that took them as such over there.
Yeah.
So again, getting the right level of both sides of the table onto the education, I guess, is probably the best way of putting it as such. Is very important, this topic over there. That's why the timeliness and the actual efficiency of it as such requires a little bit, because no matter what we do, if resources were unlimited, time was unlimited, of course we could do whatever we liked over there. And everything would be unmanned equipment. Everything. That's not reality when we do manufacturing today. So I think that part of what you say over there, ultimately someone's got to sign off on it as such over there. But that's part of where we are at with, call it sales, call it snake oil, I don't care what you call it as such over there, but an awareness is something that I think you and I need to be firm on as such over there. And we've got to get to the people where they trust us, where that peace of mind is important on this topic over here, Travis.
So this is going to lead into our next question, just changing gears a bit. So you've served the industry for such a long time. What's next for you?
Those are the hard questions. Thanks for the question. I think part of what I've really enjoyed is twofold. One is obviously people development, persons development. A lot of persons have reached out and thanked me for giving them perspective, giving them a bit of direction, in other words, in the space over there. But one thing that I find is very important in this space, and especially on the back of the COVID lockdowns and such over there, it's connecting people to people. Forget about the B2B angle of it. I think it's the connecting of relevant people to people. And that's possibly the space that I'd like to move into more, Travis. And I think that is a space where we've lost that ability to connect relevance. And obviously on the back of the network like yourself and myself, I think that's the space that I feel the energies of the universe are pulling me towards.
It's as we've touched on with AI and software and interactions, I feel that people are losing that ability because they're going, well, we'll just have some generic, email marketing campaign or, newsletter campaign. And people don't want that. They want more human interactions. They want people to understand that they have merit and they have value, and to see someone connect people with them when they have a problem, I really feel that that's going to be the thing that supports business in the next 5 to 10 years as an industry we start to develop and AI becomes more integrated into the workspace. And I think the ability just to sit down and have a conversation with someone without them feeling that they either have to prove a point or, they're trying to get a purchase order off them. I think that that's going to be very valuable in the future. So I'll take my hat off to you, I think. But I think, I mean that with all seriousness, because I think that you're positioned quite uniquely to be that within the industry and to give back to the community as well. Um,
Okay.
seeing seeing the roles that you've had, the wealth of knowledge that you've had, um, being able to transition between different cultural norms as well. I feel that you you have that skill set to be able to connect people on in a way that provides value. So it's going to be amazing. Are you did you have any reservation? Were you just, when you left your previous position, you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do, or you kind of had a bit of an inkling? How did that all come about?
I think there's a couple of very good books that obviously I've got on my shelf behind me over here, Travis, and one of them is What Color is Your Parachute?
Mhm.
That was one of those. Probably read it about 10 or 15 years ago, so it's a good reference base over there. I
Mhm.
guess we should always have that as a plan B, as they colloquially call it, as such over there. And more recently, during the COVID, Jenny Blake has written a book on pivoting.
Mhm.
So I think these opportunities have always been in the back of our minds, and they should always be there.
Mm.
Uh, let's be clear that these opportunities are there for a reason. It
Mm.
is a fact. Nothing operates in a vacuum. And I think we just got to find out where we're operating and where we can add value. And I think
Mhm.
we will find a place for us, Travis. And I'm confident about that. And the amazing part of it, guys like yourself and my family and my network are reaching out to me just to come and visit them, catch up with them, and see what is success in their lives
Mm.
and how they are providing for their families. So I'm enjoying this journey. It's been a tremendous uplift, as you
Mm.
can imagine.
'Cause I think you'd have a lot to be able to support people when the transition of people from a personal aspect's one thing, but the transition for business, you would have a lot of value from being able to talk into that and influence that space as well. Because within the Asia Pacific market, you have that reputation. Your reputation does precede you. You've been providing value. You've been connected with so many suppliers, so many larger companies. You've been able to see their transition of their management teams, their legacy that they've left as well. Also, navigating the COVID space, that was not easy for a lot of companies as well. And understanding the way that we did things during the COVID period and the elasticity contraction that we're seeing now with people understanding that the remote work model worked during that time, but it now needs to come back to a more traditional sense. We need to have personal relationships with people. We need to get on the phone and talk to people. It's no longer messagings or text message. People are yearning for that human connection.
Absolutely. And I think there are so many different articles that I've penned as such and in pencil and taken to them with highlighters as such over there. Clearly, working from home has got its advantages. I'm going to a different topic for a
Mhm.
minute as such. But I think the actual press the flesh, the actual ability to build off each other, collaborate, the ability to learn, hear what's happening. The old water cooler story as such. I
Mm.
used to have a boss who was a smoker, and back in those days over there, he laughingly told us, I haven't bought a smoke in something like 2.5 years.
Mm.
When it got to smoko time, he used to go hang around where everybody was smoking. They always
Mm.
used to offer him, but
Mm.
he used to hear what's happening, what's happening in the
Yeah,
marketplace with people,
yeah,
individuals, and such over there. And I think that WFH issue, the business aspect side of those things over there, will require this type of initiative where we are pushing for more press to flesh,
yeah,
the sharing of information.
exactly. I know that a couple of committee members that I've spoken to, they said that they said to me, they said, Travis, like, we talk about things from a committee meeting structure, but the real decisions happen at the dinner table after the event. That's when we get consensus so we can move agenda items forward. You know, we're talking about things, we're in a more relaxed setting. That's when the real value gets translated. That's when the real knowledge sharing gets done, because we're no longer feeling like we have to prove a point or bicker or argue or talk about language or the effectiveness of words. We can just sit down, relax, have that personal connection, share a meal, and share. I think sharing, in olden times you would share a meal, but now sharing value, going, hey, listen, this may work for you, this may not, but here it is here, and not expecting anything back. I feel that that's where the industry needs to go, not just producing content for content's sake, but providing something tangible that people can reflect on.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of very interesting stories, and Simon Sinek talks about Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela says his biggest uh, ability to become a good leader in his day was when he was forced to sit and listen to all the chiefs talk.
Mm,
And it was, he says, the most important, Simon says this, the most important thing is to be the last to speak in the room, not the
mm,
first and
mm,
then walk out. You know, I'm reminded there's a very good leader I worked under at the French company, and he says, we're going to have a retreat. We're going to go to the island of Bali and we're going to have a 3-day planning session. And he comes in on the last day and he says, did you have a good time? He says, yes, yes, we had a good time, sir. We had a good time and such. But he says, well, here's the plans for the next 3 years going forward. Arguably, what Simon says over there, what he's basically told his management team is that all the fun that you had for the last 3 days is a bunch of gunk.
mhm,
These are my plans anyway.
mm,
Not listening, collaborating, and taking from it such over there. I
mm,
think this is part of that people to people connection that we are yearning for. To be honest
mm,
with you, I think we are
mm,
yearning for that. We are ready for that, and as such over there. No matter, and again, we just come through the federal elections where one of the shooting themselves in the foot, where the previous opposition leader turned around and says, "Working from home is over in Canberra," and everybody went, "Oh, we're not going to vote for him."
mm.
As such over there now, the message is lost. The actual sort of intent is good, but yeah, you can see some of those particular hard issues.
It's I I feel for that, because I feel, I don't know, I feel sad in that space, because I hope that, and I don't know, we're getting completely off the rails here from and moving into political commentary, but I hope that we don't take the space that, say, America and some of our European counterparts take, we where the next generation who are voting, they're voting on personnel, they're voting on like the personality of people rather than what the party stands for. I'm glad in a sense that we're seeing more independence come into it and having a more like holistic overview. My political stances, and I'll be honest with you, I'm quite I'm I'm quite centered in my political opinion, probably centre right, not far right, but centre right. I believe that everyone should have access to a fair go and we should be able to provide, but also there's a social conscience for the people that are doing well to be able to provide for the people that are dis, uh, disfortunate, whatever that is, through circumstance or happenstance. But um, yeah, I feel that that's going to translate into the business world, and that's unfortunate because what the next generation, from my conversations that I have with people, are looking for is good leadership, role models of what role models of what a leader looks like, language from a leader, not uh, but having leadership in such a way that people can support the leader so that when decisions, tough decisions need to be made, that the leader can make them. And when Simon Sinek has probably one of the best things that's always stuck with me. He says something along the lines of a business, the um, the true value, I think, of a leader, or the the values of a leader can be understood when they take all the responsibility, but they give away all the praise. Something to the words of that effect. That they'll take all the responsibility when things go wrong. When things go right, they'll give away all of the praise. And I think that that's what we're miss. That's where I would like to see business leaders start to transition to, that it no longer becomes about them or their title. It becomes about the legacy that they're leading, and then fostering that culture of constructive criticism, but also having the ability, particularly within the engineering space, of, okay, the people who are the operators have all the knowledge. How do we move that knowledge up into the management, and how can then we provide them with a safe work environment that supports them, that nurtures them, that gives them the ability to grow and continuously improve, because the business is the family. The engineering pod is the family. The technical lead is supervising their family, and let's protect them, because if we protect them, they'll protect us.
Nice way of putting it there, Travis. I think that whole portion of the industry that we find ourselves in as such ultimately, and I've never hidden away from the fact that if I walk into a senior person's room, I turn around somewhere within the first 3 minutes, I turn around and says, look, ultimately we've got to sell to survive. Make no bones about that as such over there, so we make it clear. But then we talk about our ability to service them. And service and sales go hand in hand. And somewhere within my loose Latin that I learned a long time ago, service is sales, and sales means to serve them. And ultimately, if we can get to that point where we have identified that within, and again, kind of bringing it back out of the weeds into what kicked off this particular connection of ours, back into legislation, back into regulations, back into standards, back into keeping everybody safe as such over there, is the kind of service and the interpretation that's required. And we all know the kind of state-based organization, let's call it structures that we are faced in. But I think that's the value that we bring as part of our services as well, there, Travis. And I think that ability to service from Tassie to Vic to the New South to Queensland to WA, different industries, as you know, such over there, but bringing that serviceability and interpretation. I'm reminded back in the early, I think it was the 80s, where one of the big organizations that has now sort of been dissected is called General Electric. And the big boss G turned around and said, he was asked by one of those business commentators and said, so what's your company mission statement? He turns and says, I don't have a mission statement. I could be wrong. And there goes your blogs again, yeah, Travis. And he turns around and says, look, I think the mission statement, I'll write it up as such, but I want each one of you to write a mission interpretation statement. So what does it mean that you have to do for the business and for the customer? And that's the mission statement ultimately as such over there. Because ultimately business is there, very roughly speaking, is to make a profit. Now, you can't write that as a mission statement, can you?
Donald, I think his name's Donald Miller. He writes a book called Story. story brand, or he puts it pretty well. We're starting to adopt his philosophy that he has. Um, he says that mission statements within business organizations are wrong because mission statements should be, you know, quite specific and time based. And you should have a mission statement probably every year, not, and you revise it every year, no more than 18 months. He said, because if, for example, you were going to, uh, if you were going to enter a building, if there was a hostage scenario and you were commanding the troops that were going to take back that building and remove the hostages, you would be like, this is our mission. We're going to do this at this particular time. This is how we're going to move forward. This team needs to do this. This team needs to do that. And then the teams have their own little mission statements that attach to it. So I think what you've touched on is pretty relevant. We see this language from this corporate language that people go, oh yeah, that's great. It's quite ambiguous. It's quite vague. But how does that affect me as a cog in the wheel of company XYZ? There's nothing that really speaks to it. There's no accountability, not so much accountability, but there's no humanity, there's no human connection with it. It's just all corporate waffle. And people see through that, but we see businesses that continue to go down that road. But I would hope that over the next 5 to 10 years, we see some of the leaders in the space rethink about that and rethink about how they're selling their mission to their team, because ultimately the team members are the one who are going to perform the mission. It's not the corporate managers. We all know that. We all know that. They're overseeing the governance and the strategy of it, but they're not the ones who are going to execute on that mission. It's the people that are down on the coalface, so to speak.
There's a very good book, and it's The Art of Negotiation, like roughly speaking. And this particular author, he writes around. He used to be one of those FBI negotiators.
Yeah, Chris Voss. Yeah,
Yes, here's the one, Chris Voss.
yeah.
Thank you. There you go. It looks like you read the same library that I do. And 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 I'm reminded of one of his opening statements. He turns around and he says over there, and in a bank hostage situation, he turns around and he says over there, and maybe this is where AI could have taken us if we're not careful. You've got how many hostages? And the bank robber will turn around and says, we've got 4. Well, why don't we split the difference over there? You kill 2 and I'll take 2 and we're going by life. Now, that's a strong paraphrase, but you can well
Yeah,
imagine
yeah.
that's how silly compromise can get us. That's how silly compromise will lead us down this path over here. And in that loose space over there, what he does quite intrinsically in various methodologies over there, he brings out the person aspect in both sides. And by bringing that, and one of his techniques, as you can remember, he turns and he says, so Travis, how am I supposed to accomplish that? You want 20 million by, so how am I supposed, so he brings out, a little bit of humanness out of the person. And that's a nice way of negotiating with people or bringing the people aspect of it. And I think that aspect of it, where you are a corporate manager and such over there, where you're not listening, I think that's a dangerous space where they could end up with this, let's split it down the middle, type of approach and such over there. So let's see where this next 5 to 10 years is, you put a take us there.
It's going to be pretty exciting. I think it's going to be exciting. I don't. I think it's going to be a net positive for people. I can see the pendulum swinging, particularly with AI, and I think we'll always end up towards the center again, just with better approaches. So, yeah, we've just gone past the hour mark, so we're going to wrap this up. Where can people find you, and what do the next weeks, months look like for you, Mark?
Thanks. Look at my LinkedIn profile; is still active, and it is. I'm getting tremendous buy-in at the moment. I'm getting A lot of information being shared with me, both in direct messages. Encourage that to be the formal space where people can contact me. And
Mm-hmm.
I love to connect with anybody that's prepared to have these type of discussions. And
Mm-hmm.
if there's a need for business connections or such over there, that's the actual space over there. I'm fascinated as to how much energy is outside. I'm reminded of this one program that I worked through the other night. They turned around and said, the purpose of these discussions that you and I are having is to have the next discussion.
Mm.
And that next discussion is what the so-called elevated pitch was
Mm.
referred to. And this is
Mm.
an elevated pitch as such over there.
Mm.
I'm excited. It's a great space over there. I've never been more busier, intellectually more stimulated in my life than I am in the last 6 weeks, Travis.
Oh,
So
that's fantastic. That's fantastic news. We'll put all the details to how people can get in contact with you. We'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile below. But thank you, Mark, for taking the time today to connect and have a really a meaningful discussion. And I know that it's supposed to be a hazardous area safety focused discussion, but what we're seeing, the format of the podcast is more about getting that human connection, seeing people's experience and seeing their impact and learning from people as well. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and I hope the audience will get some gold nuggets in there. I know that you've dropped a lot during the way, but yeah, thank you.
thanks, Travis.
Excellent. All right. We will see you later.
All good.